Welcome back to the Jazz Pursuit. In this video, we're going to look at the beautiful ballad When I Fall in Love, written by V.Young in 1952, originally for the film 1 Minute to Zero. There have been so many iconic recordings of When I Fall in Love, and the melody is perfect for additional chords and reharmonisations. So we're going to start by looking at the fundamental harmony, and then discuss the possible options and additional harmony that can be added later. Before we get into it, do like and subscribe below, and check out our Patreon page for PDF handouts for all our videos, plus other extras. Now, let's get started and look at the key bits of information. When I Fall in Love is a ballad, and it's played in 4/4 time. It's been recorded by many vocalists in many different keys. The original soundtrack is in G major, Doris Day sung it in C major, and Nat King Cole sung it in D flat major. But in a jam session setting, it's most commonly played in E flat major. So that's the key we're going to learn it in. The form is 32 bars, and it's an A-B-A-C structure, with each section lasting 8 bars. First we have the A section, and then we move to the B section. We then repeat the A section before ending with the C section. Right, now let's take a look at the harmony in the A section. As I said at the top of the video, we're going to start with the fundamental harmony, primarily from the original recording, and then build up the layers of complexity after. When I Fall in Love is in the key of E flat major, and the A section starts with 4 bars of chord 1, E flat major 7. We then start the second line also on E flat major 7, before we move to chord 4, A flat major 7, in the second half of bar 5. On the original recording, we then move to chord 2, F minor 7, for a whole bar, before this then turns to a dominant chord, F7. This dominant chord, built off the second of the key, is known as a secondary dominant chord, and it takes us to chord 5, B flat 7, to end the A section. A secondary dominant chord gets its name as it's the second dominant chord in the key. As we're in E flat major, our primary dominant chord is chord 5, B flat 7, as this forms a 5/1 cadence to chord 1. The secondary dominant is F7. Rather than forming a 5/1 cadence to chord 1, this instead forms a 5/1 cadence to chord 5, B flat 7. So our secondary dominant chord takes us to our primary dominant chord, which then takes us home to chord 1. Cool! So let's keep going and cover the B section foundations, and then we'll recap all of this with the piano afterwards. The B section is effectively a long 1-4-3-6-2-5 progression. Let me explain. We begin on chord 1, E flat major 7, before then moving to chord 4, A flat major 7. Next, we move to chord 3, G minor 7, which takes us to chord 6, C minor 7. Then, as we'd expect, this takes us to chord 2, F minor 7. When we land on chord 2, we usually expect that it'll be part of a 2-5-1 progression that takes us home. However, as we're 4 bars away from the end of the B section, it's too early to resolve home. Instead, we re-cadence to buy some time, so we have a 5/1 cadence back to F minor 7, and C7 is the 5 chord that takes us there. Now, we're only 2 bars away from the end of the B section, so we can have what we expect, a 2-5 that resolves to chord 1 in the first bar of the next section, F minor 7 to B flat 7 to E flat major 7. Great! So that's the fundamental harmony of the A and B section done. Now, let's recap it all, but with the piano. So we start with 4 bars of chord 1, E flat major 7. And then in bar 5, we have 2 beats of chord 1, E flat major 7, before going to chord 4, A flat major 7. We then move to chord 2, F minor 7, for a bar, before we turn this into a secondary dominant, F7. This secondary dominant chord leads us to our primary dominant chord, chord 5, B flat 7, which takes us home to chord 1, E flat major 7 to start the B section. The B section is in effect a long 1-4-3-6-2-5 progression. We start on chord 1 E flat major 7 and then go to chord 4 A flat major 7. Next is chord 3 G minor 7, which takes us to chord 6 C minor 7. We then land on chord 2 F minor 7, but it's too early to cadence back to chord 1, so instead we have a re-cadence to buy us some time. C7 is the 5 chord, which then takes us back to chord 2 F minor 7. This time we do resolve through a 2-5-1, F minor 7 to B flat 7 to E flat major 7, and the start of the second A section. Great, so that's the foundations of the harmony done. I think it's cool how all the chords so far, except our secondary dominant chord, are chords of the key, and it's a great example of creating interest without going outside of the key centre. Anyway, now let's take a look at the melody. I find the melody of When I Fall in Love really interesting. It only uses the notes of our home key, E flat major, and this is why the harmony can be tweaked and embellished so much, as the melody itself is so strong. The A section starts with a strong phrase that's then repeated and developed. We start on the 5th B flat and then rise in fourths up to E flat and then A flat, and then we end the phrase by falling from the 3rd to the root, G to E flat. We then repeat this exact melody but develop the ending. Again we rise in fourths from the 5th, B flat to E flat to A flat, and then fall from the 3rd to the root. But then this time we rise to the 2nd F to end the phrase. Our 3rd phrase then starts the same way, before the melody is then developed and expanded. We start with our rising fourths, B flat to E flat, before we jump up to a C, the 3rd of our A flat major 7 chord. We then walk down through the scale to the 3rd of our F minor 7 chord, A flat, and then we continue falling until we reach the root of our F7 chord, F. Great, so that's the A section melody. Now let's hear it on the piano, in time and with the harmony. Cool, so the A section melody was developed through repetition, and the B section copies this, but with an additional twist. We start with a phrase that strongly outlines our E flat major tonality. We rise from the 3rd to the 5th of our key, before falling to the root, ending by falling from the 3rd to the 2nd. Our second phrase then begins the same way, but is then developed. Sounds familiar, right? We start by rising from the 3rd to the 5th again, but then repeat this same rise twice more, but through triplets, ending on the 5th. Next, we have the B section tweak. Rather than developing the same phrase again, like the A section, we now copy the first phrase of the B section, but transpose it up by a scale note, so it clearly outlines chord 2 F minor 7, rather than chord 1 E flat major 7. So, in F minor terms, we rise from the 3rd to the 5th, and then fall to the root, and we then end the phrase by falling from the 3rd to the 2nd. We then develop this phrase just like before. We start the same way by climbing to the 3rd to the 5th of our F minor 7 chord, and then we repeat this same rise but in triplets. Rather than being a direct copy of the previous line, we only repeat this figure once, before then enclosing the 5th of our home key from a scale note either side to end the phrase and end the melody of the B section. Cool, so now let's hear the B section melody and harmony on the piano. Great, So then at this point we have a direct repeat of the A section, which leaves us with just the C section left to learn. Let's take a look at the harmony first. The C section starts exactly the same way as the B section. We start on chord 1, E flat major 7, and then move to chord 4, A flat major 7. Then here's where it changes. In the C section, we now have a 5-1 cadence, which takes us to chord 2, F minor 7. If F minor 7 is the 1 chord in our 5-1 cadence, then this means that C7 is the 5 chord that takes us there. This F minor 7 chord is then the 2 in a quick 2-5-1, which takes us home to chord 1, E flat major 7. F minor 7 to B flat 7 to E flat major 7. The last line then repeats this. We start with a whole bar of E flat major 7 before we have another 2-5-1 back to E flat major 7. Again, this is F minor 7 to B flat 7 to E flat major 7. Brilliant! So that's the harmony of the C section done. Now let's take a look at the melody. Just like the harmony, the melody of the C section begins exactly the same way as the B section, with the strong phrase that clearly outlines our home key, E flat major. We rise from the 3rd to the 5th, before then falling to the root, and at this point the melody changes, and we have the peak of the melody. We jump up to the sharp 11 of our A flat major 7 chord, D. This is like a tweaked suspension, as the melody then falls to the 3rd of the A flat major 7 chord, C. We then jump down an octave and then back up an octave to the root of the C7 chord, which then falls to the flat 7, B flat, before falling to the 3rd of our F minor 7 chord, A flat. We then end the tune with a classic compositional technique. We repeat the opening phrase of the whole tune. First, we drop to the root of our F minor 7 chord, before rising in fourths from the 5th, B flat to E flat to A flat, and then falling from the 3rd to the root, G to E flat, ending by rocking between the root and 2nd. Super! Now let's hear the melody and harmony of the C section on the piano. Great! So that's the melody and fundamental harmony of When I Fall in Love. Keep your eyes peeled for part 2 of this video, where we discuss the additional chord changes and common reharmonisations that can be added to When I Fall in Love. Do like and subscribe below for new content, and check out our Patreon page for PDF handouts and other extras. Enjoy!